All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our first day of I-148. Today we are going to really talk about the things that unify all life on Earth, and I like to call this decree. So let's go ahead and get started. I know the other video was glitchy, so let's try this again. So let's go here, and we're going to start a new note. Okay, and we're going to call this one Day 1 Decree. Actually, we're going to call it the unity and diversity of life. We'll talk about and diversity. Okay. So behind me, you might have noticed that I have this gigantic tree behind me. So let's draw a little tree. Let's go here. I don't know, maybe there. Let's draw this tree, right? So this tree has a big trunk. You might hear some crows behind me and other birds. My dog's probably going to bark at some point. Here's this tree. And this tree is alive. I'm alive. The birds that you hear are alive. The lawnmower that you hear is not alive. The helicopter that you might hear is not alive. So let's talk about the different things that do make things alive and don't. So let's start with DNA. I'm going to switch over. Pen? Okay, so DNA. So DNA is the building blocks for all life. So all life has DNA, and these are the instructions for all life on Earth, okay? Now, what's really interesting about DNA is that the DNA in this cell of the tree and the DNA in this cell of the tree, whether it's a leaf or the bark, is the same. Same in every cell of a single organism. However, it's different between different trees, right? So this maple that's behind me is a little bit different than the maple that is over to my left. And they are both sugar maples, but they are slightly different in their DNA. Okay, and we'll get back to those differences in the DNA. We call them different alleles, and how those different alleles make it so that two individuals, even of the same species, are a little bit different. So DNA is the instructions for all life on Earth, and it's the same in every single cell of a single organism, okay? So if that's the case, then how is it that the leaf cell is so different than the bark cell? And the reason is because only parts of the DNA are made into proteins in different cells. And it actually does this by the DNA being made into RNA that is then made into proteins. And we'll get back to this process later, okay? So only certain parts of the DNA are made into proteins in different cells, okay? But remember this, all cells in a single organism have the same DNA. Okay. All right. So D for DNA is our first letter, okay, that we're going to be focused on. Our second letter is E, okay? And E stands for energy. So all organisms need energy. So they need, in order to copy DNA, in order to do basic cellular functions, all organisms need DNA, or need energy. Okay, so this can either be as an autotroph, like this tree behind me is, where it utilizes energy, or it makes its own, really, makes energy from the sun, okay? Or it could be a heterotroph, like us, and we use energy from other organisms. Okay, so that it could be in a salad, it could be in a hamburger, whatever it is, we're getting our energy from other organisms, right? Okay, the next one is cells. So all organisms are made of one or more cells. Okay, and these cells always come from pre-existing cells. So all of the ones that are currently existing on Earth came from pre-existing cells. Okay, and that's cell theory. Now, there are two main types of cells that I want you guys to know about. The first is prokaryotic cells. And prokaryotes are unicellular. So that's one cell, okay? And they have circular DNA. And they have no nucleus. Okay? And so things like bacteria and archaea, they are prokaryotic, so two of the domains of life, and really most of life on Earth is prokaryotic. And then we also have eukaryotic cells. So these are things like us, like my dog barking in the background. I should have left her inside. And so these can be unicellular or multicellular. So multicellular, more than one cell, okay? Eukaryotic cells have linear DNA within a nucleus. Now, your course pack will tell you some other things as well, but some of the things that the course pack says have actually been challenged recently. And so I'm just going to keep these two main things as being our what we're focusing on, is that linear DNA within a nucleus for those eukaryotic cells. Okay, we'll get more into prokaryotic cells and specifically into Asgardian archaea as we go along later in the semester. Okay, all cells, whether they're prokaryotic or eukaryotic, are going to have DNA in some form. They're all going to have proteins that are going to be able to transcribe and translate that DNA, including ribosomes. And they're all going to have a cell membrane, cell/plasma membrane. And that is going to kind of contain all the ingredients. So if we didn't have a cell membrane, all the DNA, all the ribosomes, all the proteins would all be sploshed all over. We need something to contain all of that. And so that's that cell membrane. Okay. So those are the three main things that I want you to remember when we are talking about cells. So C was cells. Oops. And then next is R. So the R stands for reproduction. So this is the idea that all cells, once again, all cells come from pre-existing cells. So my daughters didn't just spontaneously arise. They came from, and for humans at least, egg and sperm, right? Cells that form together to make a zygote. And then that single cell split to start making a multicellular organism. So a million times it's split, right, to make a multicellular organism, okay? Okay, so all cells are coming from pre-existing cells. So things that are living have the ability to reproduce. And we'll get into some of the main types of reproduction later, including binary fission for prokaryotes and meiosis for a lot of eukaryotic cells. Okay, so next we have the environment. So all living things respond to their environment. And this can be in lots of different ways. So it might be that the other day I had like goosebumps, or this morning I had goosebumps when I came out because I was cold. So I was a living thing responding to the colder temperatures that I faced when I came outside. The trees this summer will kind of curl up their leaves a little bit when it's really dry, and in an effort to keep all of that water and retain the water. They have other things going on that hopefully you guys will get into at some point in your biological careers, like their stomata closing up, and the cuticle is there to help, and all kinds of things, right? So all living things respond to their environment, okay? And that can be in lots of different ways. And then the final thing is evolution. Okay, so evolution, when we break it down to the most inclusive definition, is the change in allele frequencies in a population over time. Okay, so let's first talk about this word, allele. Okay, so alleles are differences in the DNA caused by random errors or mistakes during DNA replication. And we'll talk about DNA replication. You'll watch a video for DNA replication tomorrow, okay? So during DNA replication. And so evolution can happen in random ways. So there are random processes in which they can occur, and this includes mutation itself. So mutation, and then we also have something we call genetic drift. Maybe there's a storm that blows through and just randomly takes out some individuals more than others. Maybe I'm out gardening and I end up, destroying part of my little backyard ecosystem here that I didn't even realize was there, and I just by chance killed something. For example, we have, I'll just show you quick. So for example, we have here our bricks and some logs. We just put in the serviceberry tree, which is why you still see the hose there. And when we dug that up, we inevitably probably destroyed some microorganisms by putting it on the soil surface. So you can see here that we have some soil popped up on the right side, and organisms that need to be down in the dirt further might have died when they got exposed to the sunlight and out in this environment. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind, is that genetic drift is just us randomly being there. It wasn't any trait in the organism that made it there. It was just that we had decided to put the tree right there. Okay, so that's genetic drift. And then we also have gene flow. And that's when some organisms in a population might get to another area for lots of different reasons. So again, we have kind of our yard as an example. So this little tree right here, the serviceberry tree, is one that we just bought and put in here. So it was not an individual from this population. Its parents and grandparents, etc., are not in this neighborhood at all, and we have brought it into this environment. Okay, so that's an example of gene flow, and in this case human-driven gene flow, where we brought it in. Okay, so we've got these three random processes, and then we also have a non-random process that you probably know a little bit more about, and this non-random process is natural selection. Okay, and this is when some individuals survive and reproduce, because of their traits or characteristics. Okay, so that's our last E. So we had environment, and finally we had evolution. Okay, so that is decree. All right, I'm going to move locations because the dogs are barking a lot. Okay, so as I do that, let's go ahead and add in our learning objectives for today. Okay, so let's go here. I still have my learning objectives pulled up for the summer. Okay, let's go this way instead. Okay, so I'm just going to screenshot our learning objectives for today. So I'm doing that. You guys can do it in lots of different ways. The way that I'm doing it is just a Command-Shift-4. Okay, and then I'm going to edit that down a little bit to just be the learning objectives that I want. And you guys can take a quick little picture of this as well. Okay, let's add it into our note here. So let's get this. Oh, mine didn't crop, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it for now for today. Go back into notes. Okay. Okay, so let's go through these different learning objectives and make sure that we have everything covered. So describing the shared characteristics of life on Earth, we just talked about decree, right? So this is decree. So DNA, that's not what I want. Okay. DNA, energy, cells, reproduction. See, I think I chose that color. Environment and evolution, right? So that's decree. So next is to identify whether something is an organism or an inanimate matter based on experimental information. So to do that, we have to do some experiments. So here's our dog Katie, and she's alive, and she is moving, but that doesn't necessarily be the thing that makes her alive. So I also have these anemones over here, and they're moving too, or they're not moving, but they're alive too, right? So movement isn't necessarily something that is required in order for something to be alive. We've got some stones down here, and we have a watering can here too, and those things are not living, right? And I know that just based off of life experience. But if we wanted to do some experimental things, we need to figure out whether or not these different things have DNA. We need to figure out whether or not they use energy. We need to make sure that they're made of cells or not, right? We can see some of the things that I'm listing, but also we can't see other things, right? Like the prokaryotes that are down in the soil. And we could find them, and we could find their DNA. We could test them to see if they have the ability to use energy, if they're made of cells, if they can reproduce, if they respond to their environment in some way. And then we can do experiments where over generations we can see if they evolve as well. Okay, so we can, if I give you, an experiment where I've found DNA or not in something, you should be able to tell me that it's alive or not. All right, so that's kind of like goes back to decree, right? List the common features of cells and describe 2 different principal cell types. Not liking the way my pen is. I'm going to switch it. Okay, so this goes back to cells, right? So the 2 that we have are the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. These are always no nucleus and only have circular DNA, and these ones have a nucleus. And we're going to talk a lot more about prokaryotes and eukaryotes in an upcoming video. Okay. Cell theory is just basically that all cells that currently exist come from pre-existing cells. one of the bioconnections that you can do can kind of explores the first cell and how it might have come about. And I really think you guys should check it out if you're interested in how the first cells arose, and the moon likely had a lot to do with it, actually. And then finally describe why this final little statement is not true, or is true. Not all organisms are made of many cells. So some, like prokaryotes, all prokaryotes, and some eukaryotes are unicellular, right? Made of only one cell. And then not all cells are the same size and shape. So think about this for a second. This tree that you see in this picture, the leaves of this tree are going to be a different size and shape than the bark and then the roots. All of those different cells, even in a single organism, are going to be the different sizes and shapes, right? Even though all three of these contain the same DNA. So different cells of the same organism, same DNA, different size and shape. Okay. All right, so we've got our notes for our learning objectives for today. This is all that you need to do for today. You don't need to worry about watching any other videos. The only other thing that you need to worry about doing, okay, is your grade scope assignment, okay? So grade scope assignment is going to be to look around, okay, and find an ecosystem. So here I am in my backyard, and I just want you to sketch some of the things out. So you can draw out, I've got a couple of different trees in this area, so maybe I'll draw a tree here. This is my dogwood. Maybe it kind of looks like that. I'm not a very good drawer, and you don't have to be either, okay? So I've got a dogwood tree here. Way back there in the back, I've got a really big maple tree. I've got my different anemones here underneath the tree that I just showed you. And they've got little white flowers. I wonder how I can draw that on here. Maybe I'll just choose a really light, pretty color. Right, so they've got little flowers. I have my dog there. So I don't know if I can draw a kitty dog. Okay. Here's my kitty dog. Right? But then I also have some things that are not alive, right? So I did have some stones there, right? So you guys, what I want you guys all to do is to go out and figure out what is alive, what's not alive, and then just tell me a little bit about why you think it's alive or not. And I just want you to write that out as a summary, okay? Summarize what is alive and not alive. And tell me why you made that choice. Okay? And then you're going to upload it to Gradescope. Gradescope does require PDFs, okay? PDFs. So there is a little video on our first page, our day one page, where you can look at some of the ways to change this into a PDF, okay? So go ahead and do that. Do a little bit more than what I just drew. I want you guys to spend a little bit of time really thinking about what you see around you and what parts of decree you may or may not be using or observing at that moment. Okay? Have fun with it. It is kind of open response, so you can just open up a new sheet of paper. You can watercolor if you want. You can draw it out on a separate piece of paper. You guys have lots of different media options, but don't just take a picture and tell me. I do want you to kind of play with drawing. It doesn't have to be good. This is a dog, so it doesn't have to be a great picture, okay? Have fun with it, and I will keep recording and be seeing you all soon. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, concerns, or problems. I'm pretty lax the first week on getting things in as we figure out the IT, and then it will get a little bit more strict as we go on. Okay, have a good day, y'all. Bye.